Hi guys, good evening. This is going to be a video from a wide variety of side projects that I've been working on for a little bit now. Now that I actually have some time, now that my medical life is not as intense and I actually have some time to myself, I have decided that I would be going and answering various questions that people have asked me at length that I've kind of been tiptoeing around for a very long time now. So it's something that I've been wanting to work on for a while. I've been wanting to address things like mental health, my medical life, things like that, because in the comments, occasionally people ask about it. Most people that ask about it, I feel they do it kind of tastefully, but it's still kind of a raw thing for me, so I have a tendency to kind of sweep it under the rug a fair bit because it's relatively raw. I'm not really overly comfortable with talking about it a fair bit. So today's topic is going to be talking about mental health. More specifically, my mental health, what's going on with it and stuff. A lot of people have asked about it, and I've just never really felt the need to go and talk about it, primarily because I don't really know how to talk about it without sounding like an asshole about it. It's kind of a weird thing for me. So, I have been asked quite a few times because in my other commentary videos I do talk about my mental health very briefly, but it is a very fleeting thing. And so I've been kind of tiptoeing around it a bit, and the most common question that I get is, how come you do not address your mental health more than what you do? How come you don't talk about it as much? There's a lot of answers to it, I feel. The first one being that I feel the primary social media platforms like YouTube, Twitter, pretty much all of the large ones, Reddit, things like that, I feel like it really has no place for any sort of nuanced conversation about much of anything. I've always viewed Twitter as the place where intelligent speech has a tendency to go to die, and then YouTube is really not that much different. The reason why I feel like this is because I typically go and I look at how people treat one another, especially in the comments and stuff. I kind of look at how they treat each other on the platform as well, and I'm not really quite satisfied with it. I find that talking about, even addressing mental health is a rather tricky thing for a variety of reasons. For the sake of this commentary maintaining some level of coherency, we are going to start off with the community, and then we are going to go and move into the actual science-based aspects of it, how doctors deal with it, things like that, the various discrepancies with it. I don't really like addressing or even talking about mental health with much of anybody because a lot of the time one of two things happens. They either work to discredit it, or it turns into a pissing match of who has it worse. When it comes to talking about mental health, I think I have quite a few friends that have mental health issues and stuff, and whenever I listen to them, whenever we speak at lengths about it, I don't treat it like a pissing match because there really is nothing to compete with. Everybody's experience is vastly different, than yours is going to be. Everybody has different treatment options, everybody has different symptoms, and it's really weird how in the current day and age, how mental health to a certain lesser extent, having mental illness in general, has become, for lack of a better term, trendy. Like, when I was growing up as a kid, you didn't really talk about mental health, at least, not in my family. My family didn't really like handling anything mental health related at all, so the way that they would go and handle it is they would sit there and say, oh, you can just go and you can handle it later, or there would really be no solid dialogue about it. or even getting help for it. A lot of my family members never really believed in like medication or therapy or anything remotely productive. A lot of the time it would just be, oh, well, we have this bottle of alcohol here, we're going to use that to try to go and solve the problem. And so alcoholism runs rampant through my family as an end result. Nobody wanted to try out meds or anything sort of therapeutic. It was just, oh, let's grab this bottle and handle it.
You okay?
Most of my family has been in and out of the military for a long time. This is typically how they address all of their issues, no matter where the trauma has come from, more or less. In my family, I was the first one the first one out of all of them, more or less, to adhere to any sort of medication regimen, as well as things like CBT, DBT, just like all kinds of things, attending therapy regularly. I was the first one to go and actually make any sort of effort to try to get better. I was definitely the black sheep of my family in that regard. So I find that when I go and I talk about mental health, there is a lot of people that try to discredit it. I have borderline personality disorder, as well as a pretty new diagnosis of DID. And so it turns out that there's a large comorbidity between the two, although DID is substantially more rare. And so, as this goes on, I'm going to talk about basically my childhood all the way up to where things had started manifesting. I find that with the community and stuff, people have a tendency to wear their mental illness like a badge of honor. They're very proud of it and stuff. I've never really had the mentality of, oh, look at me, I have all of these issues, look how awesome I am. It just kind of feels like children clamoring for attention and stuff, and I've never really cared for it because a lot of my mental health issues literally put huge stoppers in my life. They impact me on a very regular basis, multiple times a day. Makes it damn difficult to do much of anything. And so, when I see kids, going around and treating it as this thing to be fetishized and, treated as something that is extremely trendy, I really kind of gag on it a fair bit, I think. And so as an end result, with the current day and age that we're living in, where it's being treated as super trendy and everything else, I feel like there's really no space for me to talk about it, because when something is treated super trendy like that, nobody really ever takes it seriously. And I feel that mental illness in general needs to be taken very seriously. It's not something to play with. It's almost killed me multiple times. And I had ignored my mental health for quite some time, and I regret it deeply. It's something that I should have handled a lot sooner. If I would have taken it seriously, I feel that I would have, I feel that I would be in a much better place. So, as far as people discrediting other people goes, I think it's kind of ridiculous, because with mental illness, you do have hallmarks and stuff, but I find that the vast majority of us have substantially different experiences. It's like that with DID, as I'm very quickly discovering. Most people with DID are very, very unique with their alters and stuff and how they experience things. Other folks with BPD are very much so the same. I was diagnosed with BPD way before DID, and throughout my years of living with BPD, I found that it's not so much a black or white thing with BPD, even though we have a tendency to do a lot of black and white thinking. It is a wide spectrum of experiences that people have a tendency to have. So most of the time when I would go and talk about mental illness, a lot of people would try to do the argument of, well, my insert relative here has this as well, and everybody that has this is like X, Y, and Z, and if you're not fitting this archetype of what my relative is, you very much so are faking things, and, you should probably stop, and yada yada. They kind of go off into the weeds with it a fair bit, and I don't really care for it too much. I never really cared for the pissing matches either. A lot of people will commonly argue about how they have it, so much worse than everybody else. Like the intensity of what they have in terms of BPD. I see it a lot in the BPD community. They're like, well, I have severe BPD and, like all this other stuff. And I've never really had much of a taste for it because I don't really view folks with BPD as, mild, medium, and like super severe. I just kind of view folks that also have BPD as people that are having similar but different experiences than me. So a lot of the things that I had to go and absorb, others have not. Does that mean that they're better or worse than me? No, it just means that they had a substantially different life experience that shaped them differently, and I think when discussing mental health, people kind of lock in the black and white aspect of it. They spend more time trying to go and lock things down to a set of symptoms, like a very strict set of symptoms, forgetting that there are so many different variables in play. DID is really no different in that regard. I feel when discussing mental health, there's not really a lot of room for nuance on the internet. Most people don't want it. They claim they don't need it. They have a tendency to do a straightforward argument. Most of the time, the argument is bad. And so I try to refrain from dealing with it whenever I can. I will not talk mental health on Reddit. I talk about it very selectively on Discord and stuff. It's not something that really happens too often. I don't really talk about it on Twitter or TikTok or anything like that. I find that mental health probably suffers worst on TikTok in general because it's frequently glorified, and this kind of leads to people going and faking it. The memeing behavior on TikTok in general kind of runs rampant a lot of the time, and then you have people that will openly be like, well, I kind of feel like I have a lot of these symptoms, and so it'll just be evident that they're just like depressed a lot of the time, but they'll be like, okay, well, I think I have, this incredibly rare mental illness, instead of just saying, okay, I'm a little bit depressed. I don't really mind self-diagnosis too much. Like, I know a lot of people aren't able to get to a specialist, which makes sense because medical in this country is just fucking god-awful when it comes to actually going and taking care of yourself. But I feel that a lot of the time, like, what I'll see is I'll have people go and they'll get a little bit crazy with it. Like, they kind of take the WebMD approach. They'll go to WebMD and they'll type in like one or two symptoms and it'll come back with, you have incurable ass cancer, and you're like, no! Instead of just being like, okay, I sat on a thumbtack, maybe I have a mild infection. And so I find that self-diagnosis is a very tricky thing. And self-diagnosis, I think, kind of damages the community a fair bit. Now, some people, like with me, I researched it a little bit, trying to figure out what was going on with me for a while, but until I had a definitive answer, until I saw a specialist, I wasn't really comfortable saying, hey, I have X, Y, and Z. There was a good portion of my life where I just kind of sat around for a while, and I was in complete denial with things, even though deep down I think I kind of like knew, I just didn't really want to address it.
Just hold on.
And so I get kind of annoyed with a lot of people these days kind of running around and self-diagnosing themselves with, whatever the hell it is that they think they have and stuff. And then it kind of feels like I feel past a certain point that it runs rampant, right? So the other aspect of things is denial, more or less. Like, you'll see a lot of people sit there and say, well, I think you're faking X, Y, and Z. And so you'll come back with your papers, quite literally. I have documentation for all my stuff. I've kind of read myself through the ringer with it, trying to figure out what's going on. And I find that even with proper documentation, a lot of folks on the internet, literally, since they just want to believe what it is that they want to believe, they'll already have like a large amount of internalized bias. And so even if you go and show them proper documentation and you want to have a healthy conversation, I find that the mass majority of the internet is not interested in having any sort of intelligent conversation like that. Like it's almost like with the internet, people literally behave like children. At times they want to believe what it is that they want to believe. And, if you come up and say, okay, you're wrong, here's why, they'll ignore it and they'll keep attacking you anyways. And so that's one of, the reasons why I don't really openly talk about my mental health. I feel like on platforms like YouTube, going and talking about your mental health is literally setting yourself up with a target on your back, because it invites all sorts of levels of harassment, more or less. Like, quite literally, it involves all sorts of levels of harassment that you just really don't want to deal with, because you really shouldn't have to deal with it. In all honesty, you're going to run across people that say that it's like a factitious disorder. You're going to run across people that say that the disorder in general doesn't exist, much like what we see with DID. You're going to run across people that claim that you are clamoring for attention or that you're bored and stuff. And while people do this, and yes, while it is a problem, it's not really as common as people like to think it is, And then faking mental illness in general, believe it or not, is considered a mental illness in its own right. So in certain respects, they are still considered mentally ill. So I find that when it comes down to talking about my mental health in general, I have to be very selective about who I discuss it with. I only discuss it with a select amount of people, and it's normally people that I know that I can have coherent conversations with without really having to sweat it too much, and most of the time it's people that also share the same comorbidities with things. And so, like, I find that YouTube in general is a very toxic platform when it comes to talking about sensitive topics like this. A lot of the time what'll happen is, since it's the internet, I kind of feel that the internet has emboldened people to go and make asses out of themselves on a regular basis, because there's no real sense of repercussion, you know? And as an end result, when you're hiding behind a screen like that and stuff, you don't really feel any sort of repercussion coming. I mean, you could just literally go and delete the comment or leave the site, whatever the case may be. There's really no sense of accountability, and when you have no real sense of accountability being held on you, you can say what you want, when you want, how you want. And unfortunately, that has a tendency to bring out the worst in people. So I've never really cared for that too much. I feel like platforms like Twitter and YouTube have a tendency to bring the worst out in folks, because they literally have no reason to be decent, so you get to see who they are relatively quickly by how they, address other people, how they treat people, things like that. As far as the medical side of things go, I find that mental health is incredibly tricky, mainly because it's changing all the time. Mental health is a relatively new thing. It hasn't been around very long. It's like this constantly evolving thing, but the problem with things that constantly evolve, the problem with things that are subjected to the scientific method quite often, is there's always a fair bit of scrutiny. Now, I feel that scrutiny is fine. It is quite literally okay to be weary of most things and to want to prove most things. That's kind of how science has always helped us progress. But I find that there's a difference between things being in its infancy versus things just not being able to be proven and stuff. As is the case with DID, we know that DID has been around for a while. Long before modern medicine, there's been multiple instances in history where it has been documented as people portraying multiple personalities and stuff. But the problem with science, I find a lot of the time, is if science cannot immediately figure out how something works, they will, most scientists will move immediately to either try to disprove it with whatever bullshit claim they can make, or they will go and they will outright dismiss it, as we typically see with DID. Now, science has caught up a lot in the last while. We're understanding how a lot of things work, especially with BPD and DID. Sorry, that speech impediment's coming back to haunt my ass. But the thing is even with, you know, research kind of ongoing and stuff, and even with things like starting to be proven and everything else, there's still a healthy amount of scrutiny. Now, I find, again, you know, I find that scrutiny is healthy, but I find that scrutiny can also get in the way of adequate care. So, to give you an idea, we're going to go ahead and start talking about my mental health history. And, you know, people will assume what they assume, I suppose, and we can just go from there. I had a pretty extensive history of abuse, starting from a pretty early age, growing up, and I weathered it. Like, I hardcore weathered it. Back when I was growing up, cops didn't take this shit seriously, right? Even if I went and complained to an officer, they would be like, oh, that's a very vivid imagination that you have. You know, most of the time, officers would be looking for things that they could easily see, like bruises and stuff, you know, things like that. Back then, while I was growing up, mental abuse was not really taken super seriously. You know, like a lot of people would go and flake it off quite quickly, and, you know, this would kind of segue into the argument of, you know, mental health is not really a thing. So growing up throughout my entire childhood, I would have to go and weather these things, and this would later continue into my teen years and my early 20s. So DID and BPD kind of hit at the same time. I had gone through my entire childhood, more or less, you know, and basically what had happened was it was a shit show from start to finish. Like, my home life was incredibly unstable, you know, and it mainly revolved around my older brothers and stuff, and then of course my mom. On top of it, she wasn't a particularly stable human being. Found out later that she most likely has BPD as well, because she has a history of abuse and she has a tendency to behave very similar to me in many aspects and regards. So shit didn't really start cropping up until my high school years. They were pretty stressful. You know, I was like the odd duck in my school, which, you know, I didn't really care. Everybody was off doing their thing. I was off doing my thing. I had started experiencing mood dysregularity and a host of other symptoms that were really, really kind of strange for me. I was losing track of time. And I don't mean like I was occasionally late to like appointments and stuff, things like that, or I wasn't showing up to class on time. I was missing entire days out of my memory. And at the time I kind of flaked it off, because when I had spoken to a guidance counselor about it, they were like, yeah, well, you know, people that typically kind of go through it, they don't really remember their childhoods. And while I don't really remember much of my childhood, it was weird to me that I was in high school and having these rolling gaps in my memory. So it was kind of like a constant source of stress for me. At the time, I had chalked it up to just being stressed. And when my senior year had rolled around, I was just kind of sitting there going, oh, I'm stressed. So I took my last period as a teacher's aide. I was kind of ahead of things a little bit, short of one math class, because math was always like my weakest subject, and they didn't really offer tutoring in the afternoons for math. So it was either woodshop, which I already had 3 straight years of, or it was me being a teacher's aide. I didn't really see the point to going and doing woodshop over and over again. I already had 3 years under the belt. That was the max that I could get. I had already maxed out agricultural science on top of it. So I had settled for being a teacher's aide for Mrs. Green, who taught Constitution at the time. I had my first encounter with DID my senior year. I was going down as a teacher's aide to the library to go and make copies. The library that we had was 2 stories. And then there was, when you first walk in to the direct left, there was a lounge, and inside the lounge was a high-yield copy machine that you could use to make paper packets and everything else. So a lot of the time, if you're a teacher's aide, you got sent down there to go and make forms. You know, the teachers in the afternoon would drink coffee pretty frequently, you know, and they would head down there sometimes to grab some as well. So I was going down, and grabbing up some forms and making copies of it. And as I was walking through the door, I had kind of heard some laughing, and it was just like really fucking with me. So I looked around, there was no other kids. And then I found that the laughing was kind of getting louder, and I eventually started having basically a nervous breakdown, and I had collapsed on the floor where the janitor had found me. At the time, the guidance counselor told me that I was incredibly stressed. I had left school for 2 weeks, and I had rested at home. And I seriously thought that it was a stress issue. At the time, my family life was incredibly rocky. It wasn't really getting any better. And so I just kind of was left to my own devices, more or less. I was just kind of fending for myself for a while, and I just kind of said, oh, I'm stressed, and that's it. This pattern had continued into my college years, where I had started taking more time to pay attention to it, I guess. And at the time, I was seriously losing my mind, and I was like, okay, well, I'm hearing shit, you know? Is it schizophrenia? Like, what is it? Because back then, I was ignorant enough to believe that schizophrenia was when you heard really clear voices in your head telling you to kill people and, like, all this other crap. And, you know, I had a very much so a pop culture vision of what schizophrenia should be. Well, was. And so I kind of went through, I had gotten halfway through my computer training, and everything had just kind of started going downhill. Weird things had started to happen, like I was going and having huge gaps of memory missing throughout the day, more or less, and I was losing track of time, and as an end result, I couldn't really remember much of anything. I wasn't really able to remember if I had actually attended classes that I was supposed to be attending at the time. I also had really weird occurrences of people walking up to me and referring to me by one of my alter's names. And they'll be like, oh, hey, you know, it's me, Jake, you know, it's good to see you again. And I would just kind of sit there, be dumbfounded, and just kind of be like, what? And so I would kind of flake it off. I didn't really take it too seriously. I was like, you know, there's a lot of weird people in the world, that's fine, you know, or a lot of the times I would think that it was a case of mistaken identity. Things had progressively gotten worse when I had started getting a very steady income, and I would start using the hell out of Amazon because the town that I was living in didn't really have like a lot of stores. So if I wanted to go and get something, say like a nice digital camera, I would have to go to Amazon and I would have to order it, or I would have to order it from B&H Photo, or, you know, I basically had to go and use outside sources to get things that I could not get in my town at the time. And so I would go, and in addition to people referring to me by different names, I would also have problems with my mail. I had a post office box out here for a while that my entire family more or less shared, and so I would go and I would get my mail from the P.O. box, and so I had noticed past a certain point that when I would go and check my mail, I would have a bunch of order confirmations, and it would be really strange. So I would go to the P.O. box when the package would arrive, and I'd find that there would be a different name on my package. And it was like really weird because with my post office box, how it works essentially is they keep track of everybody's names that are using the P.O. box. And so I had a different last name compared to my family. Like I kept my original last name from like my mother's maiden name, more or less. And then she took my stepfather's name, you know, which is Diaz. And so what would happen is I would go and I would use the tracking number, go get the mail, I would find a different name on it, and then the postmaster would literally circle the name on it in red pen. And so I would go and I would return the package, naturally, because I didn't really recognize the name on it. It was a little bit weird to me. I had thought at some point that somebody was playing a joke on me and had broken into my account, essentially. So my first Amazon account, I flatlined. It wasn't really getting any better. Other oddities would start to happen as well. Like, I found that some days I would go and wake up and there would be like art supplies on my
Leon!
table that I had at the time. And I thought it was really weird because I enjoy writing and like
It's good to
Minecraft,
see
and I
you're
do
still among the
enjoy
living.
art in various forms, but I've never really
It
been much of a
looks
fan of
like
using
we're
colored
not
pencils.
gonna find your brother here after all.
And so I would ask around about it. The woman that I was dating at the time, and she was a real peach about this. I wish she would have been a little bit more honesty, or a little bit more honest with me. I would sit there and I would ask her,
There's
like,
no
hey, hon,
reason
is there
for us to
anything
stay
weird
any
going
longer
on?
than necessary.
And she's
Let's
like,
split
well, you
up,
act kind of
look for
strange
any
sometimes.
survivors,
And
get out
I
of
would
here.
ask her to elaborate on it, and she would be
Right.
like, well, it's nothing, don't really worry
One
about
last
it. And I
thing.
said, okay.
Here's a
So
radio.
I kind of
Take
just
it.
flaked it off, and as time went on, it
That way
just
we
kind
can
of
keep in
got
touch if
weirder.
anything happens.
I had started to experience extreme emotional dysregulation in my mid 20s. And so I was going and cycling through emotions very, very quickly, and it had a tendency to get worse with stress. Essentially, the friend group that I had at the time was calling me out for a bunch of things. Apparently, I was going and being really manipulative with people, and I didn't know. Apparently, this is a part of BPD. When you're like worried about people abandoning you and stuff, a lot of us have a tendency to go and try to manipulate others to get what we need, essentially to try to maintain some form of sustainability for ourselves and the relationship in general. And so they had called me out on it, and at that point I was kind of forced to take accountability for it. I was like, I don't know what's going on, I'll figure it out. My first time going and trying to get checked out by mental health services was actually quite bad. I was literally sitting there and I was like, hey, I have, X, Y, and Z in the town at the time. They didn't really have a large amount of staff that was really well equipped to go and handle this thing. My hometown has grown a lot since then, and now they're stacked very well to address all sorts of issues, but back then they weren't. And so I was like, okay, well, I have this going on, and this, and this, and this, and, I would go in with, like, a checklist of weird crap that was happening. And at the time, they very blatantly stated, oh, it's nothing. So my relationship with that woman had ended because I had come out of the closet as trans. And she just wasn't really into it. I said, okay, that's fine. I'm not for everybody. The relationship had ended, and I had spent a couple of years solo. The gaps in my memory never budged. They never went anywhere. My friends, my older friends that I had that I would check in with every now and then would constantly say, hey, you're behaving kind of weird. What's going on? And the habit of bumping into people calling me by another name kind of continued as well, and it was kind of like driving me to drink occasionally. The inner dialogue was a bit strange. I seriously thought that it was like raging schizophrenia for a while, so eventually I had gotten with a new woman that I was dating. She was also trans femme, incredibly abusive, made another video about it. And I had started going through basically multiple hospital visits because I was suicidal and extremely dysregulated, and at the time they had said that I had DID. Like, they didn't even give me the full name of it, and BPD. So they explained to me what DID was, and I had kind of laughed at it pretty hard. I was like, yeah, there's no fucking way. BPD I can understand because I'm extremely dysregulated, but DID, not a chance in hell. So I said, fuck it. I flaked it off, and I kind of went on with life. I got hooked up to a new mental health clinic. They had stuck me on a cacophony of drugs, more or less. And so for a while, I would go and I would talk about the symptoms and stuff. I was seeing the psychiatrist they had on staff about once a month. And I would sit there and I would say, hey, I have gaps in my memory. I'm experiencing this. I'm experiencing that. what's causing this? It's seriously starting to freak me out. It's very jarring and stuff. And, I want to know what the hell I can do to go and, fix this, more or less, because I have a life to live. I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing this. I was a lot more ignorant back then. I thought that mental health was something that you could just go and fix and it's fine. No, it is a lifelong journey. Anybody that tells you it's fixable is full of shit. So at the time, they thought I was being plagued with either schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. So they were trying to figure out exactly what was going on with me. And as time went on, we were going in, treating the BPD. It was getting better. I was still having good days but more bad days than good days, if that makes sense. So I went ahead and I was on medication therapy at the time, and then I was I still am attending psychotherapy as well, and that was pretty much the maintenance for me. I was receiving case management, things like that. Recently, and by recently I mean like the last 3 months, life has been incredibly stressful. Like, life normally for me is incredibly stressful, but it seemed to be really bad in the last 3 months. I had finally experienced another collapse, and I didn't know this at the time, but I was doing what the psychiatric ward at the ER would call dexing, which is basically I was under so much stress that I was starting to rapidly cycle through my alters. Well, the hospital that I wound up at was the hospital that diagnosed me with DID the first time. And so I went ahead and they were like, are you getting treatment for your DID? I said no, because it doesn't exist. And they had very just kind of given me this look, like the "are you fucking serious" look, that we've all seen at some point in our lives. And I was completely shameless about it. So I didn't know jack shit about DID, back then, and it had really showed. So they decided to keep me for a while, and I just kind of sat there, and I was like, okay. And I was walking around in grippy socks for a little bit, and they had me seeing somebody pretty much every day trying to sort me out, more or less. And then the social worker would come by and ask me, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And I would have to speak with her as well. So I found out that I had a lot of alters, more or less, inside me, and I'm still kind of like in denial about it to a certain extent, because the whole thing just seems very absurd to me. But they assure me that I have to take it seriously, because with me dexing as hard as I am, it's not really looking too good for me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to take this seriously. And then they just kind of sat there for like a long time, and they're like, okay, well, this is how this works. It can get better. You can integrate and everything else with it, but you have to chase it, more or less. And so where this kind of leads into my medical life is I didn't know that your brain can soft lock. And what I mean by that is over the last while I've been having seizures, and we didn't really know why. So I went and I had testing done, the EEG, all that stuff, and they're like, well, we're not really finding anything short of, para-insomnia, which is a problem in its own right, because I've been lacking sleep the last while and sweating and stuff. But I found that when you start to dex when you're overly stressed, it puts a lot of stress on your alters, and then it can actually cause a soft seizure, more or less. And so I was just kind of sitting there going, okay. So they went ahead, they prescribed me Keppra to try to stem it, and it does okay. It's very hit and miss. And they were like, okay, well, you need to start working on yourself, more or less. So as time has gone on, I've been kind of forced to reconcile with this, and I'm not really sure what to make of it, primarily. I've been very selective about who I talk to with this. you know? Like, I kind of sit there and it's like, oh, okay, well, I try to stay about as safe as I can with it, but I found almost immediately with the diagnosis of going and having DID, I find that there is actually a heavier stigma around DID than there is about BPD. You know, with BPD, a lot of the stigma is, oh, they're just narcissists, or oh, people with BPD just need to grow up, or, there is a large basis for what causes BPD. Most of it is environmental, the same as DID. With DID, I found that the hill was a hell of a lot harder to climb, and I'm in many ways still adjusting to it. And I don't think I'm going to be completely comfortable with it ever. The way that I've had DID explained to me is basically I sponged up way too much, way too fast, way too early from a very young age, and as an end result, my brain decided that it wanted to survive by compartmentalizing certain aspects of me to the point where they developed into their own entities. And so it was explained to me that it's incredibly common to have gaps in your memory, and, we went ahead and worked through it and stuff, and the overall concept of me not always being the only one that is driving my body essentially scares the hell out of me. The entire ordeal had really kind of deeply disturbed me and stuff, and then that was also made worse by the fact that a lot of people are like, well, most of this crap is made up, and then you also have like a lot of those in the science community that are like, yeah, this is not real, even though there's been tons of documentation and examples of it throughout history. So I've been relatively quiet about it. A lot of people have been asking about my mental health and stuff, and I've been really hesitant because a lot of people are so damn erosive about things that I feel like there's really no place productive to go and talk about it. Like I see how people with mental health issues are treated on platforms like this, and I realized that I was just disgusted enough to realize that I didn't really want to participate in it, especially when you start like seeing videos made by other creators attacking creators that do have mental health issues and trying to discredit them and digging up their entire life and everything else. And like I look at it and I find it to be relatively disgusting. And so as it stands right now, turns out the BPD and DID have a very high comorbidity, and it's just something that I'm going to have to learn to live with. I'm already in the process of seeing a specialist for it for long-term care, but the wait list is actually quite long because my state literally only has one, and that one person is being worked through the floor. So this is pretty much where everything has kind of been at for a hot minute now, and I've been just kind of going and taking time to myself. I have all my documentation in order because most of the time when I bring it up, a lot of people, like especially if I'm going and trying to seek treatment, a lot of people are like, well, no, that is incredibly rare, you probably don't have it. And as a consequence of this, I've literally learned to start keeping my documentation in my wallet. I literally treated these forms the same as I did my name change forms for like a really long time, where it's like, oh, okay, well, people think I'm full of shit, that's fine, they're going to scrutinize me. Again, that's also fine. Here's my papers, more or less, and I think it's really awful that the state of mental health these days is so bad that I have to carry papers on me for it. And so I find that it's really awful in many regards and stuff, and I don't really care for it too much, but it's something that I have to go and learn to live with. I find that with the mental health community, it's unstable enough to where people are willing to attack me outright about it because my experience is not like their experience. I realized I really just want nothing to do with it. The generalized YouTube community, seeing how they behave and stuff, and seeing how they go and attack people, that have mental health issues, I realized that I didn't want to elaborate on it. I didn't want to make content about living with it. And then going and looking at the scientific aspect of it, you have those that are like, hey, there is a basis, environmental in nature, for BPD and DID. And then you have other scientists that, probably aren't really certified to be commenting on such things. Like, I've seen generalized doctors say, yeah, it just doesn't exist, but they're not like mental health specialists that will go and deny it or attack it outright. So I find that there's just a lot of things that kind of dishevels me a fair bit about living with mental illness and stuff between, the younger generations thinking that it's incredibly trendy to live in a hellish state like this, all the way up to going and, faking it. It just makes everything really just kind of rough. I don't really care for it. I kind of get tired of watching all the other communities kind of eat each other. The only place I feel that I really have any ability to have a dialogue about it is with close friends and my therapist, quite literally. We go and we talk about trauma and stuff, and even my therapist was like, yeah, I'm not really certified to go and diagnose DID or help with certain aspects of it, but I'm more than willing to go and still be your therapist, which a good portion of DID is attending therapy in terms of getting better, because as you address it, the walls have a tendency to lower from what I understand, and that's when integration a lot of the time can take place. So it's been kind of a very long road. And it's very strange to sit here and talk about it because I'm used to bathing in so much hostility that surrounds it, that it's kind of weird for me to literally sit here with a phone next to my face going and recording this, trying to explain what's going on with me. But enough people have asked about it that I'm kind of like at the point where it's like, okay, we can sit down and talk about this. It's probably not going to end well for me, but if people are going to ask, then I've got to learn to be comfortable giving an answer, I think. But to answer many people's questions on what exactly is wrong with me, it is BPD, DID, and then PTSD on top of it, and then the other standard stuff like anxiety and depression. It's something that I live with all the time. It is incredibly difficult to live with it. Some of it I've accepted wholeheartedly. Other aspects of it I'm still in complete denial. I'm told that I'm going to be in denial for a while about it. I've already got most of the services squared up, and ready to go. It's just something that I've been chasing for a while. Between having to contend with various folks on the internet, as well as, family members being in denial, things like that. I find the entire experience to be very, very draining. Like, amazingly draining. And so, the last while, the only thing that I've really been doing, I haven't really been working on video projects on YouTube. I haven't really been doing much of anything short of trying to recoup. It often leaves me in a very exhausted state. It is a lot of learning to understand what exactly it is that I am dealing with. With BPD, I feel that it was a lot easier to understand than DID, because at least with BPD I can say, okay, I had stunted development due to abuse and neglect, and as an end result, my attitudes are not being regulated properly due to bad neural development, more or less. And so with BPD, I was able to go and understand it a lot more easily. I was like, okay, this is what causes this. We can go and we can work on it and we can get better. With DID, I find that it's a lot more difficult, primarily because with BPD, what you see is what you get a lot of the time. Like, when you're mad, when you're depressed, when you're feeling completely fucking empty inside, you know what that is. But with DID, I find that the entire process is incredibly jarring because the concept of multiple independent people, more or less, living inside of me really scares the shit out of me. Like, it doesn't really sound very scary. Like, a lot of people sit there and have a tendency to make the comment of, oh, it must be cool to have people in your head all the time. And the thing is one, I have no control over it. I've heard a lot of people make comments about, well, can you shift for us? I don't have that ability. Most of the time, this crap starts popping out when certain triggers are at play. I can't just sit there, snap my fingers, and be like, oh, okay, we're going to swap to somebody else. That's not generally how that works for me. I find that normally it is a response to something that is traumatic or something that alludes to something that is traumatic. Like, for example, I cannot watch videos of combat at all because I will start to disassociate and shift very heavily, and it's not pretty. Another misconception is that, you know, most of the entities that are living within you are happy all the time. Two of mine are not. They're actually in a staggering amount of pain, and one of them is incredibly aggressive. So I find that with DID, there's a lot of things about it that really is unsettling. I don't really like the concept of sharing my body with others. You know, I don't really enjoy the aspect of, you know, not always being in control, more or less. And I feel that not nearly enough people really take it seriously in regards to how bad things like this scare the shit out of me. I don't really view any of this crap as trendy at all. You know, like a lot of people have a tendency to go and make light of it and stuff, and I just really find nothing to laugh about it. I don't really like wondering if I made it to appointments or not. I don't like having gaps in my memory. For a while, going and getting packages and pieces of mail with different names on it, more or less, was seriously scaring the hell out of me. There was just a lot to it, I think, and so it's really just kind of a slap in the face when people go and glamorize it and make fun of it and act like they have it and everything else. And I just really have, as time has gone on, I've really just kind of developed a deep-seated loathing for it, more or less. And so I've been trying to get comfortable with it. I've been trying to get comfortable with my own diagnosis, more or less. With BPD, I found that the rate of acceptance was a lot higher. With DID, I find that there's a lot of it that I am still in complete and utter denial about. Like when I had gotten my diagnosis and I was like, yeah, this isn't real, I had kind of laughed at it a fair bit, and they were staring at me with the straightest fucking faces I had ever seen on human beings before, and they had pretty blatantly stated, yeah, you need to take this seriously, this is not a joke. This is going to impact every facet of your life. You know, like another aspect of it that really just kind of scares the hell out of me is not really knowing where the hell you were at for all the gaps in your memory. Like even going and developing and rendering a lot of these videos, I kind of just sat there and said, hey, you know, I can't remember a lot of this. Like, at all. Like, I cannot remember jack shit when it comes to some of these videos, and so now I have the thought trapped in the back of my head of, did I make these? And it kind of like, it keeps me awake at night a little bit, because I have to ask myself, did I make these? And then I also have to ask myself, if I didn't make these, should I go and remake it so it's actually me that's doing it? So, you know, like they explained to me, they're like, these are all pieces of you, more or less. They're chunks of you. They're just different part of your brain, different parts of your brain that kind of split off as an act of survival. And but the weird thing is I feel like still, even with multiple people telling me that this is normal, it still feels very alien to me. Like, it doesn't really actually feel like me, more or less. They don't really feel like pieces of me. They feel more like intruders within me, you know? And I know that somebody somewhere is probably going to make the joke of, you're possessed, but to be honest with you, I think I would have rather had a young priest and an old priest than have to go and live with this mess. And so it just really, I find that the lapse in memory is very jarring. Not being able to keep track of time is very jarring. Apparently, I've had, according to some of my friends, I've had moments where I have actively shifted in front of them. I wasn't even aware of it. And then, like, when I go and rubber band back around, I find that as I gain some level of coherency, that if I don't know what the hell's going on in front of me, it scares the fuck out of me. And so it's very easy, like if I'm going and shifting around and stuff, it's very easy to scare the fuck out of me by not like giving me time to adjust. And so, this is kind of what I have to live with on a pretty regular basis. I mean, it's nice that I have the diagnosis. It explains a lot of what's going on, which is great. It's always nice to have answers as a human being, but at the same time, it doesn't really mean that the experience is any less scary. More or less. Like, it doesn't mean that, everything's happy and go lucky and going to be okay, but it generally means that I have a lot of work to do. And I have to focus on making myself better, which is going to revolve around medications to reduce my anxiety, as well as psychotherapy to address trauma. So at some point, if they choose to, they can go and try to integrate with me and stuff. I'm not really sure pretty much what the future looks like at this point. It's really surreal for me. I know that I gotta put the work in, because you only miss 100% of the shots that you never take, more or less. And I sure as hell have never taken shit from anything else in my life. I really just don't want to sit there and take shit from myself. Or, more or less, as silly as that sounds. It's just the entire experience is, for me at least, it is very surreal. It's not all bad news. However, when I came out with my diagnosis, the people that I had come out to were, strangely enough, very supporting. My sister and her girlfriend were very, very chill about it. My sister's girlfriend in general was like, it's not the end, Raime. It's okay. People with DID, there is hope for them. And strangely enough, it was an oddball response from her, because normally we just kind of go and give each other hell all the time. I have a tendency to be kind of hard on her because, she's young and cocky and all these other things, and she can be kind of acidic at times. So it's really weird to actually have her be really supportive. And then I was also given a lot of support by another person who I would talk to via Discord that also has DID. And so it's really been kind of a hell of a journey, more or less. I'm glad to have the people that I do have, but yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I really don't see myself going and making mental health content. I feel like YouTube is not really mature enough to really handle anything like that with any sort of coherency. I don't really feel like there's a lot of people that could really have an intelligent conversation about DID, and be able to do it any sort of justice. I sure as hell know that I can't. A lot of my understanding about it is very rudimentary because I'm still learning about it every day, And so it's just been kind of, I think, a breeding frustration of mine, more or less. So mental health content as far as like talking about BPD and DID is not going to happen on this channel. I mean, I'm okay with people asking about it. If they ask about it, I'll answer it, but at the same time, I'm not going to go out of my way to sit here and say, hey, it's this, and this, because it just, as far as I'm concerned, it invites too much chaos into your life, like it really does, and so you just kind of sit there and like you realize you don't want to deal with it past a certain point. I don't really need people doing armchair diagnoses or mental health specialists going and screaming that certain things don't exist when it's very evident that it does exist, and I find that things are just way too immature, way too incoherent, and just completely awful to damn near every facet of this. And so I feel that there really is no point to talking about it. It kind of renders everybody silent to a certain extent, which I think society would probably prefer that people with mental health issues be kept out of sight, out of mind, more or less. So it's just not something that's ever going to happen. I don't mind talking about some things selectively, but I feel like by going and talking about it excessively, by going and sitting there and like making routine content about it, that I'm kind of adding to a pre-existing problem. With as much as people are like clamoring to fake a lot of things these days, I find that there's just really no real level of comfort to go and address things like this. It's a very polarizing thing for me. And so, as an end result, it just kind of leaves me stranded, I suppose. So, yeah, this has pretty much been the answer to people asking me about my mental health. I've decided that I was going to pair up this commentary with an old Leon run I did of Resident Evil 2. That way it's not just like a black screen or like a splash screen while I go and talk about this stuff. There's actually some gameplay to go with it. I don't plan on making any real game content in the future until I can go and get myself sorted, more or less. I think what I want to focus on is wellness, taking care of myself, getting to where I need to be and stuff, and trying to have a certain level of comfort with who and what I am. I'm already pretty much at this point wrapped in services. I'm just quite literally waiting at this point. I'm going to continue putting in the work. And when I feel like I'm well enough to do so, I would like to actually come back and do more gaming. Like, I would like to do Sega games. There's just so many things I want to do, but until I can have a full grasp of what it is I'm dealing with, until I feel like my comprehension is where it needs to be in regards to my overall state, how I function, what I'm going to be going and doing with myself, things like that, I just don't really see myself doing anything super productive. So I'm going to be literally just kind of out here lifeboating for a bit. If people, would like to unsubscribe, that's fine. It doesn't really bother me at all. But I would like to go and have time, essentially, to take care of myself, to understand myself, because I'm not really going to be able to do anything productive with it constantly lurking in the back of my head. So I find that a solid education is a very good remedy to most of life's problems, and most of your problems in general. And I plan on applying that philosophy to my life, as I am currently living it. So, for those that have reached out to me and wondered why I've not bothered to answer any of their replies about it, I do apologize. It's not you, it's literally me at this point, because I am not sure how to address it. I would like to believe that I addressed it currently in a at least decently coherent fashion. So for those that have invited me to meetups and events and everything else over the last while, I'm sorry that I never got back to you. It's just with me not really understanding how good portions of me function, I don't really feel like I would really want to be around large groups of people, I really don't want any of that, more or less. When I'm feeling better, when I can get square with myself, sure, I would love to do all the fun things, but until I get to that point, it is just better for me to lock it down. Take some time, understand what the hell it is that I am working with and everything else, and getting to where I need to be. So this is something that I would like to go and take seriously, and I would like to go and keep working at it until I at least get to a certain point where I can say, okay, it's well managed.
If we work together,
So for those that came out and they listened to this mess, I greatly appreciate you guys listening to what we have to say on the topic and stuff. And as always, I appreciate your time and your effort. The last while, I've been getting a lot of really chill comments and having to deal with a lot of really chill people, and as always, I'm eternally grateful for that. So, but that's pretty much going to wrap this recording. I have others that I want to do tonight because I have more things to talk about. And I would like to talk about them while I'm not feeling like complete and utter dog shit. So, thank you all for coming out. And as always, be good to yourselves and each other. Take care. Till next time.
Ada, wait! Let me guess. You must be Ben, right? Get up, now!
What do you want? I'm trying to sleep here.
Is this the guy?
Ben, you told the city officials that you knew something about what's been going on, didn't you? What did you tell them?
And who the heck are you?
I'm trying to find my boyfriend. His name's John. He was working for a branch office of Umbrella based in Chicago, but he suddenly disappeared 6 months ago. I heard a rumor that he's here in the city.
I don't know anything. And even if I did, why would I want to tell you?
Okay, I say we leave him in there. Does anyone know where they put the key to this cell?
I have it right here, officer. But I'm not about to leave this cell. Those zombies aren't the only things crawling around out there.
What was that?
Like I said, I'm not leaving this cell. Get out of here before you lead it right to me.
Hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm the only cop left alive in this building.
What?
Look, if you want to live, then you're gonna have to leave with me.
But do you even know how to get out of the city? There's a kennel in the back of the building. Inside the kennel is a manhole. Go through and it'll lead you to the sewer entrance, but it won't be easy.
All right, I'm going.
Ada? I don't think I've introduced myself yet. My name's Leon. I'm with the RPD. It's a dead end.
You think we can get upstairs through this shaft? Give me a boost. I'll go and check. Leon, can you hear me?
Ada, did you find anything?
Right here. Think fast. Here's one more. Hey, I can't reach the ventilation hole. I'm going to have to find another way around. I'll catch up with you later.
What? Ada, wait! Ben! Can you still hear me? Come on, answer!
Damn! I don't believe this. I almost got the story.
Ben.
Bitter irony. The chief of police, a co-conspirator. Get that scum. Make him pay.
Hang in there, Ben.
Oh, my chest! It's burning!
What's wrong?
Good God, what was that?
Where are you going, Ada?
To the chemical plant. I have a feeling that's where I'll find John.
Ada! Wait! Hey! Do you read me, Claire? We now have access to the back of the parking lot.
Got it.
I'm getting out of here and heading to the sewer. Can you meet me there?
I'm on my way.
What was that all about? Running off like that was reckless and stupid. Those zombies are everywhere. Not to mention that thing that got Ben.
I was there, Leon. I know.
Look, Ada. As an officer, it's my job to look out for you. But we're not going to get through this alive if we don't work together. Okay?
All right. We'll do this your way for now.
Ada! Heads up!
Leon, that woman was... I have to talk to her. Don't move. You're the one who was with that cop, if I'm not mistaken. Identify yourself. Ada Wong. Ada Wong. I've heard that name before. Now I remember. One of the men from Chicago who came to assist the T-virus research used his girlfriend's name as his password. Ada and John, I believe. How did you know? Who are you? Annette Birkin. My husband is the man responsible for the creation of the T-virus, William Birkin. What? John's dead. He became one of those zombies. My condolences. And although I regret this, you will be joining him shortly. I won't let anyone take the G-virus away from me. G-virus? It's capable of creating the ultimate bioweapon. Its potential is even greater than that of the T-virus. Then that must mean the creature in the police department is precisely my husband, William. And it's all Umbrella's fault. None of this would have happened if they hadn't tried to steal his research away from him.
This way.
It's sheer perfection. My precious G-Virus. No one will ever take you away from me.
There he is.
So you finally come.
Doctor, we're here to collect the G-Virus sample.
Sorry, but I won't just hand over my life's work.
Stop it! You might hit the sample. That's it, all right. Okay, let's move out.
William. Oh my. Hold on, darling. I'm taking care of that bullet wound first. Stay here.
Alpha team, have you retrieved the sample yet?
Affirmative. We'll be at the rendezvous point in 1 minute.
Roger.
Are you telling me that he injected the G-Virus into his own body? The G-Virus has the ability to revitalize cellular functions.
What was that? Something's wrong. Let's check it out. Over there! Shoot it! Eat this, you freak! I'm stopping it! What is this thing? Hurry! What is this thing? Fire! Fire! You son of a...
So those rats were the carriers of the virus. As a result of his virus-induced transmutation, William should have lost any prior memories he had as a human by now. Even worse, every G-Virus bioweapon, including William, has the ability to implant embryos into other creatures. And create offspring. No. Too bad.
Ada? Ada!
Leon.
This bullet wound isn't making things any easier.
Quiet, Leon. I'll patch you up. That's two I owe you.
Don't mention it.
I just found out. John's dead.
What?
Never mind. Let's just get out of here. The sooner the better.
Ada! Ada! Can you hear me? Come on, snap out of it! Don't die on me, Ada. Come on! Wake up! Come on! Welcome back. Hey, take it easy. We're inside Umbrella's secret lab. I'll go find something to treat that wound, so just rest here in the meantime.
But I'll only slow you down with these injuries. Go. Save yourself.
I told you, it's my job to look after you.
But you'll be in danger if you stay with me. I know I've only known you for a short period of time, but I really enjoy being with you. I know I'm not capable of caring about anyone, but I don't want to lose you.
We're leaving this place together. Wait here for me. I'll be right back.
You! You murdered my husband! I know what you're looking for. You came for the G-Virus, didn't you? But you'll never take it from me. This is my husband's legacy! Now, where's that spy you were working with earlier? You know who I'm talking about.
What?
You really don't know anything, do you? You're so gullible. She's one of the operatives sent here by the agency. The only reason why she came here is to obtain the G-Virus.
That's a lie.
No, it's the truth. I discovered this when I did a background check on her. She specifically got close to John and became his girlfriend to get information about Umbrella.
That can't be. I know her. Ada wouldn't do something like that.
If you don't want to believe it, I don't really care. You're about to die anyway. What happened?
The self-destruct sequence has been activated. Repeat, the self-destruct sequence has been activated. This sequence may not be aborted. All employees proceed to the emergency car at the bottom platform.
Leon. I've been waiting for you, Leon.
What are you doing?
You know what this is about, so just hand over the G-Virus.
I don't believe this. Annette was right. About everything.
That's why I told you to leave without me, but you wouldn't listen. Now hand it over. Don't make me shoot you.
You can't do that.
Oh.
Ada! Ada, I've got you. Don't give up.
G-Virus. Leon, it's over. Just let me go.
Shut up. You're gonna make it.
It's too late, Leon. We both know it.
No. I promised you that we would escape. You just have to help me out here.
I really wanted to escape with you, Leon. Escape from everything. Goodbye.
Ada! No. So, this is what everyone's been dying for.
minutes until detonation.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
It's over.
No. I have to find my brother.
You're right. This is just the beginning.